Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who want to build million-dollar businesses without sacrificing their health, relationships, or happiness, who understand that in order to build their empire, they need a solid foundation, and that the more they are thriving, the more their business is thriving too. This show brings you the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbett, the scientist turned mindset and high performance coach for entrepreneurs, and I help you get wired for success. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast, where we talk about all things science, self-development, and entrepreneurship that help you get to that next level of success in your life and business. Today, I'm thrilled to bring you a new Leaders Are Readers Wired for Success book club episode. In these episodes, I invite nonfiction authors to discuss their latest books from the science, self-development, and entrepreneurship categories. And my guest today is Tracy Doyle. She's the author of Life Storms, Finding Your Clear Sky. She's also an entrepreneur and wellness advocate whose work sits at the intersection of business achievement and personal transformation. Her journey from a childhood shaped by trauma and instability to award-winning CEO to resilience coach is living proof that our deepest wounds can become our greatest purpose. She's the first in her family to graduate college, and Tracy earned a bachelor's degree in psychology and counseling before building a standout career in the pharmaceutical industry. She founded and led a multi-million-dollar medical communications company, earning the regional Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year award and recognition from the likes of Forbes and Entrepreneur before answering a different call. Because behind the accolades was the truth she couldn't ignore: the actual cost of high performance. Emotional burnout and disconnection had quietly eroded her relationships and personal fulfillment. And that breaking point became the catalyst for everything that followed. And I am really curious to learn more about it. So welcome, Tracy, and thank you so much for taking the time to be on my show today.
Thank you, Claudia. I'm so grateful to be here.
I'm looking forward to this because this is a topic that's really close to my heart. So, Tracy, you have lived through childhood trauma and instability, and I think many people underestimate just how deeply childhood actually shapes adult ambition. So how did your early life wire the future version of Tracy?
Yeah. So, I grew up believing that I had to sacrifice myself for everyone, right? So I grew up, my mom was at that time undiagnosed rather, mentally ill with bipolar. And, although my mom was kind and she did everything she could, sadly, she made bad choices. And one of those choices was when I was 7, she had me as a teen. When I was 7, she married an alcoholic. And sadly, his addiction took everything from us. It took food, it took heat, it took running water, it took, clean clothing, it took our health. And so, basically for me, being in an environment with a mom, and they had 2 children, my 2 siblings, being in an environment where my mom wasn't able to manage that type of stress and pressure, I showed up at the age of 10. And so, what that looked like was we were living in squalor, and, we had 2 starving kids in the house, and she didn't have a means to provide, so I started racing kids on the schoolyard. Right. And as I did that, I was doing that really to bring food home for us. Not that it was much, but that's what I did. I was racing them for their lunch. But to answer your question, at that time, my belief was, if I do really well in school, I can get out of this, right? The person who gave me hope was my grandmother. And, and she would say things like, if you do well in school, you'll get a good job and you'll have a great life. And I held on to that hope with everything that I had. And I just focused on achievement, right? And really at a young age, I defined my success by my performance. That's the backstory to that belief.
That must have been so tough. And thank you so much for sharing. I think a lot of people can probably relate to that, because I think we see a lot of high achievers coming from a background of pain. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you think, how many high achievers are actually chasing success because they're running from pain?
I couldn't give a percent to it, but what I will say from my experience, having built a business and then mentoring many people, it feels close to 90% of us. I mean, everyone I know has some sort of, not everyone, 10% I don't, that don't have this, but majority have things related to scarcity, having grown up in scarcity. For many of us who are first-time college graduates, having to, put ourselves through school and work really hard to get there, because we don't have the support at home to get us there. I think there's many of us that, sort of want to get up and out of those environments. And then yet others still, what I've experienced, especially working with others, is there's sort of this, if it's not a scarcity mindset, it's a mindset of having had either tough parents, sort of parents that were, I don't want to say abusive in the abusive sense, but in terms of it's never enough, and feeling this innate need to prove their worth at any lengths, even costing themselves, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Now, what was it for you? So when you became successful in business, what emotional need was that success trying to satisfy?
I would say two needs. So the first is that, as I said, I grew up, believing that I had to sacrifice myself for everyone, right? So, I shared that experience, right? So it was really, I provided for my family up until today. Still, I provide for my family. My mom is mentally ill. I've taken care of her all of my life. And sadly, my sister, has not only, the same type of condition as my mom, but worse. And her disability is such that she needs significant support. She would be homeless if she didn't have the type of support that I can provide for her. So on the one hand, it's that need to really provide, right? If I don't provide, no one will. There's that belief. I have to do it or else it won't happen. And it's an innate internal pressure that I put on myself. The other is really related to scarcity, right? So that need to achieve so that I can be safe physically, so that I can be safe emotionally, and that I can provide an environment for myself that I never, ever have to fight for ever again. So there were two things for me, and so when I go back to the sacrificing piece, so when we get deeper in terms of needs, I believe that if I went above and beyond and gave 110% and sacrificed myself, not only for my family, but for everyone else, then maybe I would belong. Because you see, I grew up believing I didn't belong, having been born, to a teenage mom and not knowing my dad. And so that belief was so deep, or that need was so deep and so ingrained that I just kept performing so that I would get that, that recognition and that sense of worth and belonging that I needed.
So mainly safety,
Mm-hmm.
stability, and worthiness.
Yes. And when you look at Abraham Maslow, he talks about basic needs, right?
Sure.
And so the way I break it down is there's safety needs, there's security needs, and there's belonging needs. And for me, it was all. And then on top of it, it was he talks about self-actualization, or that realization of your full potential. And on some level, that was there for me as well, because of growing up in squalor. I was just like, I don't want to be like this. I want to get out of this. So it's really, I would say all of my basic needs were activated on some level to propel me.
Makes sense. So do you believe that ambition can sometimes be more or less a trauma response, just disguised as excellence?
So I don't know if I would call it a trauma response. To me, it's more, I got to give that some thought. So it's more of an innate desire to thrive and to avoid one's pain. So I don't know if it's because I look at it as almost like the hidden cost of high performance is all about running away from that and into something else, but yet losing ourselves in the process.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Exactly.
It could be a trauma response, but I feel like it's more running from oneself or running from your pain to get to where you think you need to get to.
Yeah, so avoidance is a big factor.
Yeah, avoidance. I think thank you. That's a great way to say it.
Okay, so as you said, so from the outside, people just see the trophies and the accolades. From the inside, there's often this unseen nervous system cost. That's at least how I would describe it. So, what was the hidden price of your success?
So many things. So where do I begin?
Oh, sorry.
So no, the hidden cost of high performance took me on a journey, right? So here I am. I'm the first in my family to graduate from college. So it started out feeling like pressure to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to share, this is my burnout journey. So I'm going to tell it in the arc of how it actually, like when I finally realized that this was what it was. From there, I was such an incredible achiever, right? I graduated with honors from college. I became a high performer in the pharmaceutical industry. I was getting accolade after accolade. And then the overwhelm started, right? I had other responsibilities. I was big responsibilities at work, and then the responsibilities behind the scenes with my family. And then, of course, my sister, I needed to take on her children because she started having children young, like my mom, and couldn't manage them. So back here, became an Insta mom, right? So now it starts to feel like overwhelm, but I'm going to keep pushing, right? Because, I can do this. I can do this. That's what I said to myself. I got this. I'm resilient. I'm adaptable. I could do it. So I keep performing and keep performing. But then what started to happen was a slow erosion of my relationships. Okay. It wasn't visible yet. What it felt like from the inside was conflict. It felt like, why is everyone taking me the wrong way? Why are they trying to take the credit away from me? Why are they not elevating me faster than what I expected? What is it? And then I started, really having thought distortion, right? Really thinking like everyone was against me. And it's not paranoia. It was more like, I'll show them, I'll show them that I can do this. And I just kept pushing harder and harder and harder. Then, as I'm starting to feel isolated and withdrawn and alone because I'm thinking nobody supports me, I'm thinking no one cares about my well-being, no one wants to see me elevate, right? Then it started with getting me to that place of reactivity, right? I started that conflict started to shift into, I felt like I couldn't handle anything anymore. Now at this point in my career, I left the pharmaceutical industry itself. I stayed in it, but in a different capacity where I was now a senior director in a medical communications company, which is a niche business that serves the industry. It's a very important element of the business. So now I get to a point where I can't handle anything. I mean, I'm managing so much. I was managing over $15 million in business that I had sold. I was like the be all end all. I'm managing my family. I'm managing everything. And I'm getting to the point where I'm fixing problems. I'm the one that everyone turns to for every problem. And this is what that breaking point felt like. Okay. It was a cold, gray winter's day. It was December 21st of 1999. This was before I started my company. And I am like getting ready for work, and I look at myself as I'm walking past the mirror. I get a glimpse, and it's like my eyes are hollow. My spirit was just dim. And inside, I mean, I just felt like so empty, right? And in that moment, and this is a lead up, I will say. In that moment, I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. And I'm tolerating. I'm done being responsible for my sister's kids. I'm done taking care of my mom. I'm done being stretched in every single direction at work. I'm done being the fixer. I'm done. Right? And then in my head I whisper, if you just got good and drunk, right? Maybe you'd crash the car. That's what I said to myself. Maybe you'd crash the car.
That's dark.
Yeah. And later that night, I was jolted awake by someone knocking on my car window because I had gone through with that plan. And, in that moment, I was like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? how did I get so lost? Where am I? What's happening to me? And that was the breaking point. And that next day, I'm walking to a school meeting because, as the cops are taking me away, I'm sobbing. It's my mother. I can't handle anymore. I can't handle anymore. And, and that next day I'm walking to a school meeting because I was responsible, and I'm pushing myself after this, trying to kill myself, pushing myself to go to a school meeting. And I'm just crying, and it's like my head and my heart are fighting, and my head is scolding me, Tracy, how could you do this? But my heart's saying, Tracy, you're still here, And in that moment, it was like I cried out, like, I want to live. I want to live. And that's what I realized. Like, sacrificing yourself doesn't mean abandoning yourself. And I had abandoned myself. And that was the first real lesson. And once I realized that, I was like, okay, like, you need help, because that's what it meant for me, And so, sacrificing yourself doesn't mean abandoning yourself, and managing it all is all about putting yourself first while you're managing it all. Like, so, putting yourself first is just, managing it all means putting yourself first while you're doing that. And so I got help, right? So then I get better. I get better, and I'm like, yes, I'm better. And that's it. I'm going to start my own business. Right. So I started, and what happened was the burnout symptoms came back, because you're in the go-go phase, and you're like all excited, and you're doing it. Right. You're like, look at me, I'm doing it. I got past all that. Right. And I know how to take care of myself now. Well, I stopped the practices that got me better. Right. We get comfortably complacent. Because look at me, I can handle everything again. And then the burnout symptoms came back. And so what felt like over 10 years in my journey, that's when I finally got deeper with myself. And I realized the hidden cost of high performance is running away from yourself. It's avoiding yourself. And it's not them that's breaking you. It wasn't them that was breaking me, right? I wasn't broken. I was brave because I stepped up all the time. But I had to go deep within myself. And that's when I realized it's not anyone else doing this to you, Tracy. It's all coming in from inside your mind. It's all coming from you and your beliefs. So I believed I never belonged. And like I said, I felt like I had to do and do more and succeed to prove it. And I realized that belief took me to burnout. It almost cost me my life. And when I learned how to reshape that, that's when I found my way back, to myself, to the people in my life, because I was so withdrawn and isolated, and to my voice and speaking my truth, right? And basically, to the people I love the most, So it was a culmination of learning, but it took that depth of break and collapse, and then it coming back for me to finally realize this thing, these beliefs are serious. And if you're going to be successful, Tracy, you got to do something about it.
I totally agree. And this resonates deeply with me, because I've also had, well, not a similar journey, but I've also been through burnout and had these really low points where you catch yourself thinking something that you find so bizarre later on, where you're like, what the heck? It's just not true. Because I was in this phase of my life, I was bullied at work, and I was just a really low point. And then I got diagnosed with leukemia. And just the first thought that went through my head after I got the diagnosis wasn't like, oh my God, this is terrible. It was like, oh, I don't have to go back to work for months. And I was like, later on, I was like, what the heck? I mean, this should not be your response to getting a diagnosis like that.
But the thing I've learned about burnout is that it distorts how we think.
It does.
It distorts how we feel, and it distorts how we relate to other people, and we just collapse inward. It's like an implosion that happens, right? And then in my case, that implosion, when I couldn't handle anything anymore, turned into explosions, right? And those are the symptoms that when I recognized that, here I am, I'm a CEO, right? And now I'm like, I'm exploding. How am I going to build a team and keep a team, right? I mean, I built a business that had over 100 employees, like that's like that's not good, right? So I'm like, what is happening to me again? I was burning out again because I was not connecting with myself again. I was too caught up in performance. So it's amazing how those distortions affect us. And in your case, I can see how that, like how you could go into that belief, like, yay, I finally get a break. Right?
Exactly. I really thought that my body had the kind of wisdom to become sick
Yeah.
so that I did not have to go to work. So it really felt like kind of my body was trying to protect my heart, if you want. So yeah.
It's almost as if your body, what I've learned is it's like all the things that I'm describing and you're describing, those are the signals.
Yeah.
And so it's like your body is saying like, hello, like listen to me, and to me it's mind, body, and soul, like we get all these little pangs, and yet we're like so driven from these beliefs that convince us that we have to keep pushing on, and we don't stop, and we don't connect with ourselves, and we don't take care of ourselves. And that's so common for any of us who are entrepreneurs.
Yeah, totally. Why do you think high performers are often the last people to realize that they're burning out? Because they are, right?
No, I think that's a great question. I think because we sort of look at high performance as commitment and dedication.
Yeah.
And and it sort of, for me, I'll speak for me, it feeds us, right? Like, I'm doing well, so I don't think we see what's happening. And so for me, when I was in that reactive state, which was very, very, it was bad. I mean, it was bad for anyone who worked with me. And, and we start thinking that's the distortion, right? I'm so committed. I'm so dedicated. They don't care. They this, and we start going all out there rather than recognizing that those are the signals, and we need to go inside here and work towards it, and recognize how we're deceiving ourselves. Because, that belief of I'm dedicated and I'm committed and I'm the only one is a deception, right? I realized it was a deception. So I think for us, that's what makes it so hard, because we manage it all. We do everything for everyone. Ultimately, if you're feeling like you're someone who's managing your spouse, signal. You feel like, at least in my case, if you feel like you're someone who's managing the family, signal. If you feel like you're, not you have to be responsible over being cherished, right? Signal, right? Those were the things. I didn't see any of those signals. I just kept thinking, this is my role in life, and I'm the only one who can do it.
Accepting
and I think that's why we don't see it's burnout, because we're stuck behind that mask of high performance.
Yeah, it's an identity thing, I guess.
I agree.
Yeah, and I also noticed that often competence just becomes camouflage over time.
Yeah.
So many people, they just look strong while they're quietly collapsing. So yeah, exactly, right? So again, what's your message to everyone who's trying so hard to make everyone else believe that they've got it all together, when in reality they just feel burnout and unfulfilled?
My message is, again, I'll say it. You're not broken. You're not broken. You're brave. It's time, though, to take that bravery and focus on you, right? Because, the thing that for those of us who are high performers and are hiding behind, and I don't want to say hiding, but sort of camouflage, I loved your word, behind that confidence. If you see the signals, it's time, right? It's time to rethink the approach. What is happening here? Don't take it to the place I took it. And I always want to say, if anyone's out there having those thoughts, like I'm better off dead, please get help. I had to get help. And it's so important to see a professional and speak about that. But for the thing that I learned is, as I said earlier, what was shaped can be reshaped. When I learned how to reshape the beliefs that had shaped me, because here's the truth, what I've learned. It's our life experiences that shape our thinking. Now, we're all wounded on some level, right? And think about it. Like, so for me, yes, it was trauma. It was pretty significant trauma. And I basically internalized that trauma into certain beliefs, as you heard. For others, it's very critical parents. It's being bullied at school, which translates to being bullied later in life. It's, it's basically, for some, it's significant losses. There's so many ways that these experiences that we have, it could just be emotional neglect because you have a parent that's not necessarily intentionally neglecting you, but they're a high performer and they're just not giving you the nourishment that you need, right? We internalize these things, and it's pretty amazing to me when we recognize how we internalize and we see how it translates later, right? So what I say to anyone is when you go in and you recognize and sort of see how your life experiences shaped you and name what they've created, now you're empowered to change. And so for me, my favorite story is I wanted balance, right? This was just before my collapse. This was, as I said, I was working before I started my company, and that's when my burnout breakdown the significant breaking point happened. I was sitting with the owner of the company, and I'm crying, and I'm saying, I need help. And, and you're not giving me enough employees to help me. And you're not caring about all the things that I'm doing, right? And he sat there and he nodded and he leaned in and he said, Tracy, you will give 110% until you stop giving 110%. And until you change, nothing's going to change. So I'm not going to get you any more help. I was like, see, he doesn't care. No one cares about me, right? And that's an old belief, by the way, right? That was an old belief dating back to that alcoholic stepdad who I thought didn't care about us, right? That was the big beginning of the implosion. 2 weeks later is when I had my breakdown, right? And that breaking point. And when I went through that burnout recovery journey, and I then, had those symptoms again and got deeper and deeper and deeper, I realized that man was 100% right. I couldn't see it at the time, but I was the one. These beliefs that are shaped quietly back here, they quietly drive us. They drive us to all sorts of things, right? Yes to the success, yes to but even the camouflage, because they deceive us, right? So my advice to anyone is take the time to see it, name it, and learn how to change it. And when you practice those changes, that's where mindset technique comes in, because every burnout expert tells you the only way to overcome it is change your mindset. But for many of us, we don't know how to do that. And I didn't, right? So when I finally went deep and found out what those beliefs were, I could create my own personalized mindfulness mantras, my own personalized mindfulness affirmations, and I can start filling myself.
Let's maybe stay with this awareness piece for a moment and talk about some of the common toxic beliefs that we see in high achievers. So you already mentioned something along the lines of, if I don't do it, no one else will.
That's right.
I think that's a very common one.
That's a big one.
What else?
Yeah, if I don't do it, no one else will. Nobody cares, because no one understands all the pressure that we have to perform and to basically achieve and generate revenue. That was a huge one for me. Nobody cares. I think some of the others are, basically, I'm trying to think. So those were my two big ones right there. Yeah. Nobody cares, and if I don't do it, no one else will. But some of the others that I've seen is no one supports me. Similar to no one cares, but it's just no one supports me. Working with others, I've seen that one as a big one. Some of the other ones I've seen are, I can't speak up, because if I do, I'll rock the boat, and if I rock the boat, I'll lose what I have. Right. Yeah. So I can't say anything about it. I just have to sort of roll over and do it. So don't rock the boat is another big one. And as a leader, that one creates a lot of internal pressure, a lot of implosion, right? So especially as an entrepreneur, because it's just like, I don't want to rock the boat. The other one, which ties more sort of to people pleasing, is basically we have to go above and beyond always, right? And not set any limits, right? So I always have to deliver. I always have to give, right? Going back to the self-sacrifice, and
rest is weakness. I can sleep when I'm dead.
Rest is weakness. Actually, rest is lazy. But vulnerability is weakness, is what I would say. Rest is lazy and vulnerability is weakness. I mean, those are, I think I just exhausted everything I could think of. But those beliefs, what I've learned though, is when we're in burnout, we have sort of I always put it out here, a triggering event that awakens that belief, right? And when it awakens it, it sort of comes back, it comes up to the front of us, right? And it ignites for us, it ignites another limiting belief, either I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy. And as a leader, it's usually I'm not good enough. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, right? Mm-hmm. And then it shoots. I love Tony Robbins' work. He talks about 3 core fundamental fears. And I say it shoots right to our feet, because it's all happening in here, right? Stand straight up. It's right head to toe. And when that fear gets triggered, it's either fear of losing what we have, so loss, fear of never getting what we want, so never getting to that point of being able to sell the business, right? Or fear of being less than, or getting less than we desire in that moment for the business. And so here we are in that. But what happens next? To me, so those beliefs create what I call self-centered traits. So hear me out. I'm not saying selfish, that you're a selfish person, but self-centered traits are really, selfishness is, when you look at the definition, it's what am I absorbed by, right? So this negative thinking, this self-centered thinking, what's the absorption? For many of us, it's self-reliance. So the belief of I have to do it myself leads to self-reliance, which is, that's it. I'm doing it myself. Then you're not good enough to do it. I'm going to do it. But what do we tell the team when we do that? You're not good enough, right? I don't trust you, right? So we start to affect our teams, right? Or if we go to we got to do everything. I have to, sacrifice myself and do everything for the client, for the business. What are we telling? I don't have boundaries, right? So you shouldn't have boundaries. That was a big problem with my team. They were really thinking I expected them to work 24/7. I had turnover because of that, right? Because I'm thinking we have to do it. We have to go, right? So some of the other ones, nobody cares. What would happen with me there? If I thought you didn't care, right? I'd go right into, I'm not good enough. I'd shoot right into, I'm never going to succeed and get this business where I wanted to get it. And then boom, what was a self-centered trait? Well, it was really self-importance and self-righteousness, really. Like, I'm going to tell you what you need to do. And, I wasn't managing well, right? I was actually getting dismissive and arrogant, and I had a tone that, what did it say to my team? Right? Mm-hmm. It pretty much said, I don't care about how you feel, right? The business is more important than you. And so these distortions, like those are the distortions when you're not aware of what's created by these beliefs and how we respond to them, right? And how we act, if you will, then we're left, everything we feared happens. That's what happened to me.
Yeah, and it's also interesting how we mirror our own negative beliefs, right? As you said, you feel that you're not good enough, but then you tell your team basically they're not
good enough. Exactly. You're afraid you're going to lose the business, and then as a result of how you acted, you lose the business. I at one point early in my business, I said something I was reactive, and I said something out of turn to a client. My biggest fear was losing that client. I lost that client. My team didn't lose that client. It was how I handled a situation that lost that client, And so, being aware of how those beliefs, I always put them here, how they drive us and how they sort of propel us into acting in a certain way. We don't see that, So if you're getting feedback I got feedback from HR. I'll never forget it. She sat me down and she said, Tracy, we're having some high turnover. Okay, well, what's the problem, right? She goes, you're the problem. No, I can't be the problem, right? I'm the one generating everything. No one understands, and that was a big wake up call. And that's really when I started going deeper with my burnout journey. Again, that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I was camouflaging again by high performance, and these symptoms are coming back, and they're now costing me my business, and costing me my team.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? How much of healing burnout is mindset work, and how much of it is actually nervous system reset and just working with the body? Because I think, as you said, there are more components. You have to go body, mind, and soul in your recovery journey.
Yeah, I believe it's mind, body, and soul. So it's a third, and a third. And when you are off balance with that, it shows up. That's my experience. So the first thing for me was recognizing, as I said, seeing how those life experiences shape my thinking, which is what beliefs were formed. So I had to see it and name it. But I also had to name those traits. What did they create? Right? That was the mind work, right?
Mm-hmm.
The body work, though, was using mindfulness to reset some of that stuff. So I'll give an example. So imagine you just got done with your meeting with finance and they're telling you that, they're worried about AR, and you're like, oh gosh, and you're looking at what's coming future forward. Where's the business? And, your heart starts to pound, right? You can't hear anything because your ears are pounding with your heart. And you're like, okay, I have to breathe, right? So, in that moment, you breathe in, I'm breathing in calm, and I'm breathing out fear. I'm breathing in calm, and I'm breathing out fear. The box breath always works, right? But then what happens? Someone walks in, a client's really upset. We didn't meet a deadline, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now what, right? So when you're not managing it, oh gosh, that's the explosion right there. That's the opportunity. For me, that's really where personal affirmations come in for me, because, I have to look at my initial reaction and my response to calm my nervous system down. And that's where the reset has to happen. And there's many times that in meetings, I'd be sitting there saying, I'm removing fear and I'm filling myself with faith and trust, right? I'm removing my fear and I'm filling myself with faith and trust. But then there's that part of me that wants to start taking over. I'm removing that self-reliance and I'm filling myself with the ability, I'm replacing it with the ability to be open-minded and understanding and receptive to other people's ideas, right? So, I'm able to breathe in and out and breathe in and out. And then it's like, okay, so client's upset, talk to me. What do you think? What do you think we need to do? Right. And I'm able to handle and manage that situation. Prior to doing my work and resetting, that would have been a reactive that right then and there would have been a reaction. Now the third component, so we have the mind, we have to me, that's really mind and soul and body. But the other part is physical body, right? What works? What mindfulness practice works for you? For me personally, I like walking meditation. I need to use my physicality, right? I have to do it. And so, as when you're in the midst of work, you just cannot go out for a 5 or 10 minute walk. Sometimes you can, but for me, I had to find breath, and I had to find and make time for myself in the morning. So mornings are my intentional moments, right? So I get up and I give myself 5 to 10 minutes of quiet. Then I go for an hour walk. I had to build it into my calendar. I built everything else in, but I wasn't putting myself first. Build that in, so get centered and grounded. And then work using mind and reset techniques with mindfulness all during the day, during the stress. And that is what, for me, is what it was to manage, a multi-million-dollar business and how to handle it. Now, I'm not going to say I'm perfect and I didn't, and I managed perfectly every time, because like I said, a third, and a third, when I would back off of a certain practice, I would find myself getting reactive again. And if I did, though, I learned how to have hard conversations that were vulnerable. So I don't mean hard with them, but vulnerable conversations with my team to say it was totally uncalled for and unfair. Let's reset, let's start over, and they appreciated it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Are those the steps of your Aurora method, or is that something else? Can you talk about your framework?
Well, it's part of so the Aurora method is really 5 parts. It's see it, as I said, name it, and learn what to change. So change it, right? So, but change takes practice. So it's see it, name it, change it, practice that change, and repair it. So the repair it part is really having those conversations, because let's face it, burnout fractures the relationships in our lives. It fractures the relationships with our teams. People don't trust us. They might be afraid of us, right? Because of our reactions. In other cases, if we're imploding and we're just withdrawn, they're afraid. They don't know what to say to us. They think we're untouchable, and so they're terrified to come in and talk to us about something because we're so aloof. I was, right? So the repair is being present. The repair is, if we have a reaction, quickly, addressing it, and that was, I would say things like, all right, that was just completely uncalled for. That was so uncalled for. And I didn't mean that. And it's not jading, meaning justifying, arguing, defending, and explaining yourself. It's really just, that reaction just came out of nowhere, and it was not meant for you. Right. So let's go back. I am so happy with everything that you're doing. And what just came out of me was uncalled for and unfair. And let's, and I will say, I'm sorry. In some cases, I'll basically acknowledge everything that they're doing. So it depends on the situation. But the other part of repair has to do with showing up at home. Because if we're feeling like managers of our spouse, or we're feeling like managers of our family, we're not present. We're either mentally divorcing, or we're reacting constantly. So it's learning that, using the same techniques in those situations as well, and letting them know, that we need help. The greatest thing with a family meeting is calling everyone together and saying, I apologize. I apologize for managing everything myself and not giving you the chance to help me. Right? Because that's what we do. We close everyone off. Right? So it's just really giving taking those opportunities to repair those relationships. And in some cases, it's an actual break the ice discussion where and this is the repair it. I call it acknowledgement conversations. And I'll give an example. I've been really thinking a lot about our relationship lately. And I realized, I'm so consumed with work that I'm not here for you, and you have been going above and beyond, and I don't even recognize that. So what I want you to know is I'm going to do my best to be home and be present. And I want to share the weight with you, right? Because we're like, I'm working so much, and we're criticizing. Or I've been thinking a lot about our relationship, and I realize I never tell you how much I see how much you do for us. And all I do is point out the things that you don't do, and that's just so uncalled for and so unfair. And, when you acknowledge like that, your spouse is like, whoa, you see me, right? We want to be seen, but yet we don't see others, like you were saying before. So the repaired part is the part that really helps us build bridges back. And Francis Ward wrote a book called 52 Esteemable Acts. So when you acknowledge you're doing an esteemable thing for someone else, you're building your own esteem.
Yeah, I love that. Your book is called Life Storms, Finding Your Clear Sky. So what storms were you really writing about, and who is your ideal reader?
Yeah, my ideal reader is anyone who feels that they're managing it all. So an entrepreneur, anyone who's in business, right, who is climbing and trying to get ahead, but anyone who is struggling in relationship conflict, right? So I wrote the book from the perspective, it's part memoir where I'm sharing with you the life experiences that shaped me in the first chapter. Then it moves on to how did it start affecting me when I started growing my career? What happened, right? As I started becoming who I was in life. I take you to my breaking point. Then it becomes framework. I start showing you the framework. The first thing was that I call that the reaction cascade, when you're triggered and the belief is awakened. And looking at the reaction cascade and recognizing, yeah, I do that. And then from there, I walk you through the Aurora Method. It's got various exercises, so the See It is all about self-awareness, right? So the Name It is all about emotional accountability, right? So you start to see how it shaped you and how you're acting as a result. The Change It is an exercise where I call it the Life Storm Navigator, where you're actually thinking and doing the opposite so that you know how to create your own personalized mindfulness mantras and your own affirmations, which is the practice it part. Once you sort of create them, you practice changing. And then from there, the Repair It is just all about how to have those conversations. And so basically, who it's for is anyone who is either feeling, or struggling rather with burnout and just feeling like there's no way back. This book is for you, because I will help you find your way back. I take you through it as if I'm sitting across the kitchen table and walking you through it as a guide and a friend, because that's how I regard this work for myself and for working with others.
Yeah, I think that will be very helpful for a lot of people. And I'm curious, what was the writing process like for you?
Oh, the writing process was, so in 2021, I was faced with a family situation. My mom had passed in 2019, and I did not fully embrace my sister's disability. I did not think she was as bad as my mom, honestly. So I set my sister up. I knew she couldn't work. I knew she had challenges there, similar to my mom. But her daughter and she then I get them set up in their own smaller place. We sell the estate and we get them set up. Okay. So that was 2019. By 2021, my niece is failing school, top performer. She was very similar to me. So I said to her, so what do you need to succeed? You're going into high school. And I know that you really told me you want to go to college and you want to do things. And she said, honestly, I'm like, yeah, like I want to help you. And she said, I need help with my mom. So she had the courage to tell me that she had become her mom's caretaker 2 years prior, right? When her Nana died. So at that point, I had to make a decision. So my spouse and I, it was like, what do we do, right? Do we move them here, or do I move down there, and keep them in their environment where they were comfortable for many, many years, and support my sister so that my niece can thrive? So we make that decision. We get a house in a nicer area. We get my niece into a better school district so she can get prepared for college. And I'm commuting 3 weeks there, 1 week home, and I'm commuting. But during that process, my network was gone. I had, in 2019, I had made the decision to cede the CEO responsibility to someone else because I wanted to sell and I didn't know how. So I had to make that decision. So a lot of big things were happening. So I'm isolated. My role had changed. I'm dealing now with similar triggers as my mom, right? And I'm feeling it. And I'm like, oh no, you've done so much work. No. And I'm still practicing, but I'm feeling those, all that churn, I call it, come up. So I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, no way. Like, we are not going back. And what I've learned is that when I pour my heart into helping others, I help myself, right? So getting out of that self-centered negative thinking, not letting those beliefs drive me back. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to write a book. So it's be my project while I'm here for 4 years. So I start writing the book, and the memoir part was the part that really reconnected me back to how those life experiences shaped me. And it was very, very cathartic. That process was amazing. So the first draft of the book was all memoir. And I was sort of telling everyone, how I learned what I learned. Like, this one showed me this, and this psychologist taught me that, and this book taught me this. And then I pieced together all the things I learned into this framework, and I wanted you to know what I learned. But then I started working with a development editor who said, wow, I applied this work to myself. And he was giving me examples of relationships he had repaired, and he didn't realize how his burnout had really affected him. So I was like, wow, that's amazing. And he said, but I got to tell you, he said, you're not coming across to me as the teacher. You seem like you don't feel worthy of being the teacher. So I started crying and I said, you're right. I don't feel worthy of being the teacher. And he said, teach me. How you've been mentoring people with this for years. You've been helping so many people. He said, teach me. So I went back to the drawing board. So it's part memoir, then it goes into part workbook. I teach all the conversations I had. So I created the tools that I had been verbally doing, and those are the tools inside the framework. And then from there, what I did was I talked about all the pitfalls that happen, right? All the things are comfortable, are I call it deceptive complacency. We stopped doing it. How do we continue building on ourselves and not giving up on ourselves? So the third part of the book is, so it's sort of framework workbook, and then it sort of goes into inspiration and motivation. So that's really how I've structured it. And I share my whole life, and in the back end of it, I share how I had when I had to make the decision to step down, what was that process like using the Aurora Method? So
I love that.
It was an amazing process. It took me a few years, but when it was done, it was something I was so proud of. And I'm so happy to say that the book community was proud too, because I just received 3 BookFest awards. I placed in business leadership, psychology, and mindset, in women in business leadership, and also for self-help, for relationship and communication improvement. So I was just like, yay, the book world has seen what I'm trying to give to others who are struggling.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Ever the high achiever, right?
I didn't plan that. So that I didn't expect that. So that was, for me, was a pleasant validation I felt from the universe there.
Did writing the book tell you something surprising about yourself?
Yes, I would say that the belief I don't belong, I knew that it was a big one for me. When I was going through the book and writing it and writing the experience that actually shaped that belief, it was very cathartic. It was very painful. But as I was creating creating the tools and giving examples of basically how to apply this, I realized, wow, that one belief. So I'll tell you the story. The belief I don't belong came from, my mom had me when she was a teen. She was the oldest of 9 children. Here I was, right? I felt like I was the youngest of 10. My grandparents felt like my parents. My mom was my mom, but it was just like I belonged there. Our last name was Doyle. I belonged with everybody. But when I was 7 and mom married, all of a sudden they had a different last name. That didn't bother me at first. But my stepdad's mom, so my mom's mother-in-law, she started calling me names, right? She called me a bastard, right? And now I'm at this point, I'm 8 years old. I don't know what that is, So, and she'd make me sit on the floor. You can't sit at the table and eat. You need to sit on the floor. So, I'm a student. Back then there's no internet. I look up in the dictionary, what does that word mean? And I'm like, she thinks I'm a dog, right? Why is she treating me like a dog, a female dog? I'm like, I don't get it. Then what started to happen was his siblings, children, so my step cousins, they were calling me the same name, right? And they were saying horrible, rotten things to me, right? And they were shunning me. So I'm being shunned by an adult and being shunned by children. And I'm like, I couldn't understand it, right? So then I started internalizing it. I'm like, wow, they're not my family, right? Then it's like, he's not my dad. They're not my family. Then I started thinking about my mom's family. And I'm like, they're her family. They're not my family, and so all of a sudden I'm like, I don't belong, I don't belong here. So fast forward, I saw that impact in my intimate relationships, right? I was very insecure. So I saw that. But then when I was writing the book, I started realizing, whoa, that belief wreaked havoc in my business. Okay. Anytime I got a spidey sense that you didn't like me, because think about belonging needs. It's esteem, personal relationships, and it's also close, intimate relationships, right? So it's all three. But those two, esteem and personal relationships, if I felt like you didn't like me, now granted, I could have said something that made you feel that way, but I couldn't see that yet. Ooh, all of a sudden, right? I'd get, real tight. I couldn't breathe. And then I found myself having to prove to you how much I knew. I got very self-important, very, okay? I'll show you who I am, okay? Not understanding that created havoc because it really was dismissive and arrogant. And I didn't see it as that because I couldn't hear the tone that was coming out. So when I saw that as I was writing the book, I was like, I had learned other things about that self-importance through my journey and how to reset that. But I was like, oh, wow, that sense of not belonging happened there too. That's where it came from. So that was a huge upheaval and an aha for me. And then the I don't belong in relationships and personal friendships. So as I got super busy as an entrepreneur, and I know everyone can relate to this, what starts to happen is your friends are like, you were the one who managed everything, right? Who got everyone together. At least I was. I coordinated everybody and I was following up. We got to do this. Well, that became overwhelming and I couldn't do it. And then my friends started saying things to me like, what's the matter? Like, you can't invite me to your house anymore. And, and I'm getting like, are you kidding me? You can't invite me to your house. Like, you can't plan. Like, I was getting very angry. what I realized was that same thing, that I don't belong. Like I was so distorted that I started, the trait that was developed was abandonment, self-avoidance, where I abandoned those relationships. I was the one pulling, like, instead of speaking my truth and having a voice and saying, hey, look, I am so overwhelmed, but if you plan something, I'm there, right? I didn't have the ability to do that. I was so stuck in, see, I don't belong. See, they expect everything from me, right? It's like, see, no one cares. No one cares. And no one really wants, like, they don't want you there. They want to use you and come to your house. They don't want, it was nuts, So I realized as I was writing the book and I was doing the exercises that I teach people, I was like, wow, this one belief, as much as I had sexual abuse in my life and all of that trauma with my stepdad, that one belief wreaked havoc everywhere. And so when I finally got to the root of that, what a breakthrough. It was a huge breakthrough for me.
Yeah, it's amazing when we discover that we are the authors of those self-fulfilling prophecies, right? It's like, oh my God, what did I do?
And especially, and when people tell us we create it, we're like, no, I don't create it. The myth is we think it's all of them that do it, right? That's doing something to us.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners today before we wrap up?
Yeah, the main thing is that I can't emphasize it enough. You're not broken, right? You're not broken. You're brave. And that bravery, really, the biggest courageous thing you can do for you is to get in touch with you and basically learn what to reshape so that you can continue to thrive in your business and can continue to thrive in your personal relationships and reclaim that joy and fulfillment that you want. Because after all, that's why you're an entrepreneur, right? You're a business builder, and you want to create amazing experiences for people. So that amazing experience you want to create starts with you and starts with you taking care of you. So that's what I want to share. And if anyone resonated with anything that I talked about today and you're feeling stuck, because my book is for everything I said, but especially if you're feeling stuck and you've tried something, let's have a conversation. Just meet with Tracy.coach, schedule a one-on-one with me. I'd love to talk.
Thank you so much. Now, so you already mentioned your website, but is that the best place for people to find you? Or tell us, where do they get the book?
Yeah, the book is on Amazon, and I know how busy everyone is. So it's an ebook, it's an Audible, and it's obviously paperback and hardcover, so they can go right there and get it. But you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Talk to me on LinkedIn. Come see me. But my website actually is tracydoyle.life. But meeting with me is meetwithtracy.coach. So
okay, wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tracy, for sharing
Claudia,
tips and insights and your story with us today. This was so much fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So keep up the great work. Take care and talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please take a sec to rate and review my show or share it with a friend. That way you can support the show and help me reach and support other entrepreneurs like yourself as well. If you would like my help to figure out how you can go from overwhelmed and overworked hustler to empowered and confident leader, check out my website at www.wiredforsuccess.solutions and book a free 20-minute strategy session with me. Can't wait to help you get wired for success. Until next time, take care. Bye.